Welcome to another video. In this one, I'd like to give you my thoughts and opinions on why a good photographer will always outshine AI, or artificial intelligence, when it comes to photography. An old friend of mine used to say that he wasn't going to bother to learn Photoshop or Lightroom or any kind of post-processing on a computer because, after all, computers weren't here to stay. Now, he was joking, of course, and I guess we can all say the same about artificial intelligence. Don't worry about it because it's not here to stay. We know that's not true. It is here to stay. And I'd like to give you 3 thoughts on why I think that a good photographer is always going to outshine artificial intelligence. So, stay tuned. My buddy who didn't want to learn computers used to always get in my ear and say, "Ah, here he comes again, the birds and baseball photographer." And to a large extent, he was right. That's what I used to like to photograph mostly, was birds and baseball. And that was because I lived near a lake and there were plenty of herons and ospreys and storks and all kinds of birds for me to photograph. And I was a big baseball fan, so I would go to spring training and go on the back fields and try to find some unique images back there, along with going to the ball games themselves. That's point number 1. For a long time, birds and baseball, that was what my niche was. And that's the number 1 thing that a photographer will have, is a niche, especially a professional photographer. There'll be a landscape photographer, a sports photographer, a wedding photographer, a portrait photographer. Rarely a combination of the two, but it's possible that they are, but they will have a niche. Can AI copy a niche? Well, sure. It can create a bride standing in a window, but can it create a particular bride on her wedding day? No. So a wedding photographer, a good wedding photographer, really doesn't have a lot to worry about. Now, as far as a company just wanting a picture of a bride in a window as opposed to a particular bride they don't care, well, then they may lose a little bit of business to AI, but overall they're not going to lose a lot of work, in my opinion. Landscape photographers, the same thing. People complain, well, everyone is replacing skies and everything else. Again, in my opinion, art is art, right? So people are going to interpret it the way they want to. Can AI copy that? Sure. Do people use AI to manipulate photographs now? Of course they do. I remember years ago people would say, well, digital photography, it's going to ruin photography. It hasn't ruined photography. It has enhanced it in some ways, and in other ways it's ticked off some people that are more old school and like the image to be the image that they took. But again, as we'll discuss later on in the video, those photographers are going to have something that artificial intelligence can't copy. The second thing that a photographer is going to have after a niche is a style. And no matter what your style is, to some extent AI can copy it, and to some extent possibly they can't. In developing my style shooting sports, over time it became more of a, for me personally, a watercolor, a painterly kind of look that would be hard for AI to duplicate. I know I can't duplicate it a second time. In other words, I can make one and I can't make it look the same a second time because I use brush strokes, and I just can't pick the same colors necessarily. I just can't do the same thing. I could probably come close. So AI, again, could it copy it to some extent? Probably. But still, my look is my look. And when people see some of my images, they know most likely it was mine because of my style. I have a niche, which would be sports, and I have a style, which is that watercolor look. Over time, my style has changed quite a bit. When I originally started photography, I was purely a black and white photographer. I was a film photographer, and I shot black and white. I rarely shot color film. With the advent of digital cameras and digital photography, that's when I started getting into more of a painterly look, at least with my sports images. Now with my portraits, I've gone back to black and white for the most part. I've gotten away from color. You can have different styles. The third thing that a photographer will have that AI just can't duplicate is a photographer's voice to go along with their niche and their style. For some of you that don't know, I write novels. And it took me a long time to develop my voice as a novelist. What is my voice when it comes to my novels? Well, it's pretty specific now. And it took me about 1 million words of writing in order to find my voice. It was a lot of hard work and it took me a long time. My voice now is mystery with a little bit of suspense around the corner. The story is told mostly through dialogue by the characters and not with a narrator, though there is some narration. And I like to throw in a little bit of humor, some pop culture humor, possibly some humor with sports, and maybe some humor with a little bit of history to it. But that's my voice. Now, how does that relate to photography? I think being a writer helped my photography in finding my voice. With sports, again, it really translates, my style translates into the watercolor painterly look, but it's mostly with portraits. For a while I shot a lot of high school sports, and without even really knowing it, my voice was the action right after the play. What was the reaction to the players after the play? That was my voice. I didn't realize it at the time until a couple of years I went back and looked at some of the images, and I kind of discovered that that's what I was doing. Now I also would put a painterly look to some of those images as well. But I worked for Max Preps for a while, which was a high school photography site. And I couldn't put the painterly stuff on that, so I would just submit my images. I'd edit them a little bit, but they were pretty much straight out of camera, other than adjusting for color and lighting a little bit. But I did go back and notice that more times than not, they had more of a portrait look to them. So I was developing a voice without even realizing it. And then when I get back and look at my baseball images, again, they mostly had a portrait look to a lot of them. Now when I go and shoot portraits of my family and other people, I have a very unique style. So my niche would be portraits. My style is black and white with a little bit of a platinum gradient over top of it. And my voice when it comes to portraits is to look for that millisecond, that little instant where my subject wants to show a part of them. Maybe their emotion of being happy, sad, showing a little bit of their personality. Whatever it is, I want that moment. As Brissant used to say, that decisive moment. That's what I look for in my portraits. My style is black and white with a little bit of a platinum gradient over top of it. And the niche is portraits. So the photographer has three things: a niche, a style, and a voice. In that voice, what AI cannot copy is your connection to your audience, or even to yourself, if you're your only audience, or if you have an audience of a few people on Facebook or wherever it is. You're the storyteller. Your images over time, a collection, your portfolio has a story that you tell, and people will eventually notice your images through your niche, your style, and your own particular voice. I had a friend of mine not too long ago on Facebook tell me that they don't even have to look to see if I'm the one who posted it. They can instantly look at the image and know it's mine. That's a huge compliment. And that's what AI can't copy. They can't duplicate that. Maybe, yes, they can do one image here and there, but it doesn't have that long-term wow factor. It doesn't have that story that you can tell where you had to go to the beach 6 months in a row on the full moon in order to get the image that you wanted. It can't tell the story of how you had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning for a week in order to get one decent sunrise shot. Or maybe you didn't get any and you were frustrated. You had to go back 20 times before you really got an image that you were proud of. You can tell that story. You can say, hey, I didn't replace that sky. I didn't do any of that. That's what was there in that moment. Now, yes, because of digital photography, maybe you can blend a couple of images to get exactly the look that you want, but that's your style. Your niche could be landscapes. Your style could be blending a couple of images at sunrise, doing seascapes. But your voice is going to be that story that you tell. There's a local person on the radio, talk show host, and she ends pretty much every day with, you might as well be yourself because everyone else is taken. Well, that's good advice not only for everyday people, but in particular for photographers. If you want to replace a sky, who cares? You know, people get all upset and uptight about that. They want to clone something out. Okay, so what? You know, that's the story that they're trying to tell. Learn to accept it. Learn that everybody's going to have their own individual style, their own niche, their own story that they want to tell. And don't worry so much about them. Get out there, take your own images. Learn to get better. Learn to compete with them without crying about it. You know, digital photography, computers didn't ruin photography. Digital photography didn't ruin photography. And in my opinion, AI is not going to ruin photography. It's going to change it, but so what? Because you just need to go out there and shoot your own images and have fun, right? I mean, that's what photography is supposed to be about. I know there's people that will disagree and say, no, it's about me going out there and being a wedding photographer and making money. Okay, fine. But you still must enjoy it to some degree or you wouldn't want to be doing it. It's still about enjoyment. And photography is you getting in your own space, finding your own voice, doing your own style. And in time, AI just can't do that. It can't compete with you. So be yourself, enjoy your photography. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Take good care. If you enjoyed this video, if you liked it or learned something, please like and subscribe. I'm trying to build a little bit of an audience, and one of my big faults is I never ask people to like and subscribe. It's funny because I was in sales for a long time and you always have to ask for the order, right? So if you don't mind, smash that like button, like and subscribe. And now, until next time, I'll see you.